Hello my friends and welcome back. In this video we're gonna introduce a new concept called Lambda expressions. First, let me introduce the Kotlin literals. In programming, a literal is a constant value assigned to a variable. For example, val x equal to 10. Here, val is a keyword, x is a variable name, and 10 is a literal. Since its type is integer, it's called integer literal. Similarly, we have double literals. For example, double 1 equal to 13.8, and string literals, for example, str equal to welcome to our course. This is all about the variables. Now let's check the function literals. In Kotlin, functions can be assigned to the variables passed as an arguments or returned from another function. When we assign a function to a variable, it becomes a function literals. In Kotlin, we have two types of function literals. They are lambda expressions and anonymous functions. In this video, we're going to introduce the lambda expressions, and later on in the next videos, we're going to introduce the anonymous functions. The lambda expression is a short way to create a function, and we can see here function name and the return type. This is the function syntax in general. Return type, then the body and the return statement. Let's see and let's introduce the lambda expression and see how to write the new form and new syntax of functions and expressions. Lambda expression. Lambda expression is a short way to create a function. To define a lambda expression, enclose the method body inside braces. To the left side here in this example, we have the function add to number to num and x as a parameter and y as a parameter, integer parameter, and int here is the returning type, and return xy here is the method body x plus y. To the right here is a lambda expression, a function without a name. Here we can see it took into the parameter x, it took into parameter y. This sign, this arrow, to the right of the arrow or next to the arrow is the body and the method body. Okay, and here is the operation and the function itself, x plus y. And this is equivalent to this writing. So lambda expression is a shorter way to create function. Let's talk about the lambda expression itself and how to create and how to execute lambda expressions. There are two ways to execute a lambda. Either by adding a parenthesis after the variable name or by calling the invoke method. Here we have created a variable called print welcome, and this is the equal sign, and here is the lambda expression that will print for us a welcome to our course message. In order to call this function, this value, you can see it's a variable, we add this parenthesis, or we can call the print welcome without the parenthesis, and we call the invoke method. In the next video, we're gonna talk about the lambda expression syntax, and we'll go deep. And later on, we'll move to Android Studio to create examples and see lambda expression in. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to a very interesting concept in Kotlin called Lambda. I know it may be confusing the first time you see it or you deal with lambda expressions, but later on when you start dealing with them every time you create applications or programs, you will get familiar with them. So don't be frustrated when you see this long line. This is the general Lambda expression syntax. We'll start with the left side, the val Lambda. This is the variable name. And here we have next to it data type 1, data type 2 that will give us a return type. And this is called the function type. Function type is similar to a function signature. It contains parameters and return type. Here we have data type 1 and data type 2. That returns for us a returning type. Don't worry, I promise you to master Lambda expressions, but step by step, follow me, get your notebook and write this in these notes down because they are very important and you'll use them many in the next sections and many in the next lessons. Here we have an equal sign, and next to the equal sign we have these things inside the curly braces. Here we have the variable 1, data type 1. Please refer to the and notice the data type 1 that we have defined in the function type. And we have variable type variable 2 which contains the data type 2. So these variables are linked to the data type 1 and 2 respectively. Then we have the method body. This whole thing is called the Lambda, and this is the Lambda. Okay? Let's take an example, a quick example of the full syntax of the Lambda expression. Here we have a variable called add, and this is the variable name called add. The second type, or the function type, the second section of this Lambda expression is called the function type. Here it took into parameter a data type integer, a second data type integer, and the returning type is integer. Then we'll move to the equal sign, and next to the equal sign is the Lambda itself. It took into the parameter the parameter A of type integer, parameter B of type integer, and it gives us the method body which returns the A plus B, which is a returning type of type integer. So please guys, think about and make sure that you understand that this integer is linked to this integer and this integer is linked to this integer. This is the returning data type 1, which is for the parameter A, and integer 2, which is for the integer for the parameter B, and the return type is the returning type of this method body A plus B. So A plus B will give us an integer, and this is what we trying to call here in the function type. Let's move to the but before we move, just one question. Every time I need to create a Lambda expression, I need to define all of these codes. So it's simpler to create a function instead of creating a Lambda expression. The answer is no, because there is a shorter syntax for the Lambda expression. Let's start with this is the original example, and this is the full syntax of the Lambda expression that we've discussed in the previous slide. And these are the new or the shorter syntax of the Lambda expression. There are two shorter syntaxes. We can skip the function type, so you can see we didn't define the function type here. We directly skip it, so we remove this from our expression, and we directly put the equal sign, and we put the lambda expression. Also, we have a second type or second shorter type. We can skip the data types inside the curly brackets. If you do this, you should include a function type. So you can see here int equal to int, and here we didn't define again that a is an integer, b is an integer, and the returning type would be an integer. Okay, so int, we remove this int and we remove this int, and everything will work fine. So this is the shorter syntaxes of creating a lambda expression. Usually we'll use this syntax. Val a, this is the name of the variable, and this is the lambda expression itself. This is the parameter of type a, of type integer and called a, and this is the parameter b of type integer that returns for us a plus b. So this is the shorter syntaxes of lambda expressions. Hello my friends, and welcome back. In this video we're gonna talk about the function types and the different forms of lambda expressions. There are 4 function types depending on the parameters and the returning type. With parameters and no returning type, with parameters and return type, no parameters and no return type, no parameters and return type. So let's jump into Android Studio and let's introduce the lambda expressions and see the different forms of these function types. So open Android Studio or any other IDE. Let's create a new Kotlin file, and I'll name it as lambda. Here, lambda double A, just to test for lambda expressions. And here I'll start by creating our main function in order to run the program. The first type of lambda expressions is with parameters and with return type. In order to create it, always think about 3 sections of lambda expressions: the variable name, the function type, and the lambda itself. So we start by variable called add. This is add1. This is the first type of function, so I name it as 1. It took into the parameter int and int, and the returning type of it is a int equal to, and I'll use a shorter syntax a b without specifying the a, it's an integer, and b is an integer. Or you can use the other shorter syntax. You can remove these and keep the a and b syntax. Okay, you can write like this: integer a, integer b, and the returning type, and here would be an integer, and here we specify the method or the function body, a plus b. I need to add a to b. Okay, then let's call it print, and what I need to call, I need to call the function add1, the lambda expression add1. Okay, so for that I'll start with add here, add1, and what I need to pass here, I need to pass 2 parameters of type integer. Go and add 10 to 20. Let's run, and here we go, we have 30. So this is the first type of lambda expression. Okay, it took into the parameters a and b, and the returning type would be an integer. The second type of lambda expression would be with parameters and no return value. In the same way, I'll start by variable, add 2, equal, and here I need for making it simple and to understand well, I'll add here the integer, and the returning type of them would be an integer in order to make it clear, because with parameters I need to specify these, and with a return type I need to specify here the integer. Here I'll do the same, but please pay attention how to specify. I don't need a returning value. I'll start with an integer, and here it would be no integer, nothing. So how I can specify? I'll put the unit keyword. Unit refers that it is as a void, so no returning type. Equal to, I don't need to make any returning type. I need just to print the sum. So A, B, these are the variables, and this is the lambda expression. Print, for example, sum equal to, or directly, I can put here A plus B. I need just to print an N. And here, print line. Okay? In order to call it, I specify add to, and I need to pass the variables that I need to call and add them. I need to add 40 plus 30. Run. And you can see that this is for the first function and the first lambda, and this is the second lambda, which is 70. So there is no returning type here for this lambda expression. The third type of the lambda expression is no parameters but with return value. So we start by val. For example, message. I'll make message or add 3. How to specify that there is no parameters? In the previous function and then previous expression, we used the unit to refer for no return type. Here we need to refer no parameters by an empty parenthesis. And with the return type, so I need to make a return type here and specify the return type, for example, the string. Equal to the lambda expression, I need to make, for example, print welcome to our course. Okay? This is the lambda expression, or I can specify here the lambda expression directly. Okay? Then I can use println and I specify add 3 directly. But if I run, there is a problem because add 3 is a lambda expression, and if you remember, we have 2 ways to call the lambda expression, either by typing .invoke or adding the braces or the brackets. Let me run, and you can see that the third lambda expression is executed successfully. So this is how we write no parameters but with the returning type. The fourth type and the last type of the lambda expressions are no parameters and no returning types. How to write it? I guess you understand it. Add 4, for example. this for no parameters, and this unit for no returning values. So we can see that from the previous expressions, we learned that the empty parenthesis for the no parameters and the unit keyword refers for no returning values, equal to print ln rate us, or welcome again. Also, in order to call it, add for.invoke, or I can call it by adding the parentheses. Okay, so this is welcome again. Message is appearing here. So in this video, we introduced the 4 types of writing Lambda expressions with parameters, with a return type, without return type, without parameters, and so on. One last note I need from you to understand, and it's very important: we don't always need a variable. We can directly use Lambda expressions. So for example, if I have a Lambda expression print, I need to print it down. But for example, it's called add or multiply. So how to write a multiply Lambda expression? I can write A, it's a integer, B is an integer, and it returns for me A times B. And I can specify directly here the variables and the parameters. So 4 times 5, for example. Okay, let me run. And you can see that the result is 24 times 5. You can see that the Lambda expression here, we write it down. No variable is stored inside it, and we can directly write it and specify after it the parameter. Hello my friends, and welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about the anonymous functions. We introduced the Lambda expressions. Now let's talk about the anonymous functions. I want from you to continue writing your notes on your notebook or your computer, because these are very important notes. Anonymous function is a function without a name. For example, the syntax of this anonymous function would be: don't be frustrated when seeing like this line. We will make it very simple, and we will segment it into small chunks. Val, the variable name. This is the name of the variable. Data type 1 and data type 2 gives a returning type. This is this is how you can understand it. So data type 1, data type 2 gives returning type. These are the data type of the parameters, and the return type is the type of the returning value. Equal the function fun, parameter 1 and parameter 2. Did you notice the keyword fun? Function without a name. Function, and took parameter 1 and parameter 2 according to the data type 1 and data type 2. And we have a keyword called return type. And here the method body. Please write it down, and in the next slides we're gonna introduce the smaller, shorter syntax of this anonymous function. But this is the general anonymous function syntax. For example, we have this anonymous function val add. This is the name of the variable. The parameter types and the data types are integer and integer, and the returning type would be an integer. The function, fun, there is no name for this function. Fun, A and B. These are the parameters according to the data type. So A is an integer, B is an integer. And did you notice here the returning type is an integer? So this is the returning type. And the method body would be A plus B and returning value of them. So here I am adding A to B, making a simple addition operation, and then returning the value as an integer. So this is the syntax. Let's introduce the shorter syntax of anonymous function. This is the basic and the general syntax of the anonymous function. We can get rid of this part, so we can introduce a variable name, variable name, whatever you want, equal directly to the function keyword, fun, data type 1 and data type 2. Then we need to add the return type and then the method body. So we can get rid and eliminate the data type 1, data type 2 that gives us the return type. So these are more details and more explanations on what are the parameters and what are the returning types of this function. So we can get rid of them. This is the shorter syntax, and we're gonna use it many in our projects, and we see it in the next videos and the Hello my friends and welcome back. In the previous videos we talked about the Lambda expressions and we took real examples about these types. So I hope you write them down and also I comment them later on. If you need to download them from the resources folder, you can get them under the Lambda expressions and the anonymous functions project. So open your Android Studio, and inside the main function, I'll talk about the different forms of an anonymous function. But before I start, I should mention a very important note. Please, guys, write it down on your copybook, on your notebook, on your computer, whatever you want, but please save these because they are very important notes. Look at this anonymous function. This is the variable name. This is the function directly. We omitted the data type 1, data type 2 that gives out the returning type. This section we can omit it. So just for demonstration, I've added this just to tell you that I can remove it. As I told you, in the shorter syntax of anonymous function, we can get rid of it. Okay, so back to the variable called add. This is the variable name. This is the function that we can introduce. And this is the return type. These are the parameters A and B of type integer. And this is the method body. In order to call this anonymous function and execute it, we can type, for example, println, and inside it, I call the function add. But add took into the parameter. If I need to execute this function, I need to put these brackets, okay? Also, I can add invoke. So in order to call the anonymous function or the Lambda expression, you need to add .invoke. You can call the variable name .invoke method, or you can directly put these braces. Also, inside these braces, I need to insert the parameters. You can see that Android Studio tells us that we have two parameters, int and of type int and int. These refers for A and B. If I type 10 and 20, we can see if I run the program, and the results is here, or are here, the 30. So 10 plus 20 will be returned as 30. So you can see how anonymous functions work. The note, and the very important note that I should mention it before we start introducing the types of anonymous functions, is if the method body has only one statement, this is the method body, only one statement, we can omit the return keyword and the braces. This is the return keyword and the braces. So how to write it? I'll create it. Val add to equal to function of A and of type integer and B of type integer. These are the parameters, and now I can omit the returning type and the parentheses. Sorry, the return keyword. So despite writing return here and these parentheses and these brackets, I can write them down directly with integer equal to A plus B. You can see I removed these braces and I removed this return keyword. If I run the program again here, print add to, it will give me the same result. You can see it's working fine. So whenever you have only one line, one statement in the method body, we can omit the return keyword and the braces. Okay? Hello my friends and welcome back. We'll continue with the anonymous functions and we'll introduce the different types of anonymous functions. We learned the general form of the anonymous function, and we took an example and we said that we can omit the return keyword and the braces if we have only one statement. Also, we have learned about the shorter syntax. We omitted the data type here, so we introduced directly the function and then the method body and the variable name. Now, let's introduce the different forms and types of the anonymous function. With parameters and return type, with parameters, no return type, no parameters and return type, no parameters, no return type. Let's start taking an example about these types of anonymous functions. With parameters and return value, let's start with multiply. Variable called multiply equal to function. It took into the parameter A of type integer and B of type integer, and it will return for us an integer. Here I can write directly return A times B. Also, as I told you, because it's one statement here, I can omit this parentheses and write it directly like this. Okay? But I prefer the general form to like get familiar with anonymous functions. So print ln, and here I'll call the multiply, and I need to call it the multiply or invoke method, and here I need to pass 4 and 5. If I run the program here, I should get 20. These are from the previous video. I can comment them and run the program again. I can get 20 directly. So you can see this is an anonymous function that took into the parameter A and B, and also there is a return value because we return A times B result. Okay, it's on form of integer. Now let's introduce the second form of the anonymous functions with parameters and no return value. No return value. Okay, and we learned before when talking about the Lambda expressions about the no return value. So whenever you have no returning type, you should use the unit keyword. So here, function, let's say it took into parameters a of type, here multiply, 2, it's of type integer, and b of type integer, and here I should specify the unit keyword. This is as a void. There is no returning type. Okay, so whenever you have no return type, you shouldn't use the return keyword. If you type return, you will get an error when using and calling the multiply to parameter or variable. So print, I need to print the multiplication. So a times b. And also I should mention it like this. Let's call multiply 2 and pass into parameters 4 and 5. If you notice that when there is no return value, I can't call the print ln and include it inside it, because we didn't expect to get any returning value. Here I am calling the print here inside our method value, the method body. So did you notice that the print ln is moved up because I am expecting to get no returning value? So if we run it again, we get 20 for the multiply number 2. Okay, this is how we use the anonymous function with parameters and no return value. Also, there is a very important note. It's an optional, an option to specify the unit return value. You can see it's in gray. I can remove it. Okay, so here if I run the program, it will be the same. But I should mention every single note here in order to understand everything. Okay, guys, this is a very simple way. Okay, so I should specify here the unit in order to understand it well. The third case is no parameters and return value. Let's start with val. This is just a message. It will be a message, msg, function, and you can see no parameters, so I specify the keyword function with no parameters. Did you remember the empty braces in the Lambda expression? And this is the same, but it is the function keyword. The return value, it would be a string. So here I can use the return keyword, welcome to our course. Print ln, and I need to call the message value. Okay, let me run. And you can see welcome to our course. This is the third type. There is no parameters, but a returning type, and you should mention it here with the return. The fourth case is no parameters and no returning value. It's very simple. Val message2 equal to function, and you can see this is an empty braces, so it indicates no parameters, and the unit keyword indicates that there is no returning value. Print ln, and I need to print it here and make everything here because there is no returning value. Welcome again. Then I need to call the message2. Run, And here we go. Welcome again is printed directly. So these are the different types of anonymous functions. Congratulations, guys. We covered the anonymous functions and the Lambda expressions. Now we are able to write them and to see them into our next projects and see them into Kotlin syntaxes and Android widgets and Android listeners, and we're gonna get familiar with them. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. In this video, we're gonna talk about a very important topic called the higher order functions. Please, guys, concentrate with me, get your notebook, and write these notes down, because these topics like Lambda expressions, anonymous functions, higher order functions are very important, and you will see them into many projects and nearly all projects. Okay, so please, guys, focus with me. And many people, many developers have errors and problems and misunderstanding of these functions. Please, guys, it's a function that takes a function as a parameter or returns a function or both. You can see that we can give a higher order function a function parameter and or an input, normal input, like variables. And it gives us an output and or a function. So it can return a function or return an output or both. So, in general, Lambda expressions are passed as an argument to higher order function or returned from it. We can also use anonymous functions for the same purpose. Let's jump into Android Studio and start understanding with real examples how to create higher order functions and how to pass Lambda expressions and anonymous functions to these functions. Let's create a new file in our Android Studio projects, and I select an empty activity, and you can create either a Jetpack Compose or other normal project, but you create new Kotlin class and create a new file. Okay, I created the lambda a.kotlin file, and this is what we created before. Okay. Now, let's introduce a higher order function. Here, under the main function, I created this higher order function. Function, HOF, higher order function. You can name it whatever you want. So, please, guys, concentrate with me in order to understand this very important concept. Here, HOF is a higher order function because it takes a function as a parameter. You can see here is a function. Let's see how the parameter is structured. The addition here is just the name of the parameter. It can be any name. You can name as multiply, x, 5, whatever you want. Okay, so start with letters. This is the name of the variable or the parameter. Int and int here represents that it takes two integers, and this int represents that it returns an integer. So this is a function, its name is addition, and it took into parameters two parameters of type integer, and returning value is an integer. When we call HOF function, we have to pass a lambda that takes two integers and return an integer. Let's do that. So you can see the result is addition. I'm adding 4 to 5 and printing the result. Let's call this HOF. Okay. Here I need to create a variable in the main called add equal to, and this is a lambda expression. It took into the parameter an integer a, an integer b, and returns the a plus b value. Okay, so here we have it. And HOF, I'm calling HOF. Here is the variable or the function name HOF, and the variable add is passed to it. So add is a lambda expression, and HOF is a higher function, order function that accepts a lambda expression. In the first statement here in the add, we have created a lambda expression that takes two integers and returns the addition of them. Next, we call the half, and we pass the lambda expression to it. Okay, now let's run our program. And here we go. You can see that the addition is made for 5 plus 4, and the result is 9. We can call addition here. For 5, the lambda add will invoke with a equal to 5, or a equal to 4, and b equal to 5, and the add returns, returns the sum of two numbers. We assign it to the result. So here I'm calling the HOF function and passing this lambda expression. This lambda expression is executing 4 plus 5 according to this method body. Then it stores the result into a result variable. Then I am printing this result. Okay, we can directly pass the lambda expression without creating the variable. So I can create here HOF, and I can pass the lambda expression without creating this variable. So I'll cut it and remove this. Let's run, and you can see the same result. Okay, so this is a higher order function example. I'm creating a lambda expression that adds two numbers. I pass it to the HOF, the higher order function that performs the addition, and then printing the results. So this is a quick an overview about the higher order functions. I want from you to write these down on your copybook because these are very important notes. And in the next videos, we're gonna deep dive into higher order functions in order to understand them well and get ready to start building complex applications and understand everything in. Welcome back. We'll continue with the higher order functions. In this example, we have the function HOF, which is a higher order function, and it took into parameter addition variable that it's a lambda expression taking into parameter two integers, and the returning type is an integer. It's very simple, and we talked about it before. And in this, the main function, we have HOF. I'm calling this function, and I'm passing here this lambda expression with integer a and integer b, and returning result, or the body of this lambda expression, or the method body, is a plus b. So it will add a to b. Till now, everything is good. There are two cases where we have to move the lambda argument out of parentheses. If you have hover here your mouse, you can get this message. Lambda argument should be moved out of parentheses. But if you run the program, it will run and everything will work fine. It will add 4 to 5. It gives 9. So the first case where we need to move the lambda expression out of parentheses, so I don't need these parentheses anymore, there are two cases. The first case is when the lambda is the only argument. So here HOF took into parameter only a lambda. Okay, so this argument is only lambda. So I can remove HOF parentheses, and I can pass HOF directly like this. Run again, and you can see I am calling the higher order function, passing into parameter the lambda expression without introducing the the parentheses. The case number 2 that we can omit the parentheses when calling the higher order function is if the lambda is the last argument. So for example, I create function number 2 called HOF2. In this function, took into the parameter name of type string and the addition. It's the similar to this argument. So it took a lambda expression and the name as an argument. And here, this will make the same addition, and also it will display the name when printing. So hello, make a message, hello, and here I'm specifying the name variable and the result, of course. Okay, let me run and call the HOF2. Sorry, I missed that. HOF2 higher order function. I need to pass the first parameter is Jack, and the second parameter is this lambda expression. So here I'm passing it. Run, and you can see hello Jack, and the result is 9. Everything is working fine. I'm calling this, I'm printing this message hello and the name, and also I'm displaying the result, which is a lambda expression called addition, passing 4 and 5 here. But the second case, I told you how to remove the parentheses from when calling the higher order function. If the lambda is the last argument, here we can see that the name is the first argument and the second argument is the lambda. So in this case, we can omit the parentheses. Okay, so I can remove here the parentheses, and also I can put it like this. Okay, so I am removing the parentheses from the lambda expression, and I'll keep it like this for the first argument. Okay, if you have many arguments and the last argument is the lambda expression, you can write like this. So this is the first argument, which is a string, and this is the second argument, which is a lambda expression. If you run the program, you'll get the same thing. Okay, so don't be frustrated when seeing these writings and these writings. These are very simple, guys, because if we have a single parameter here, a single argument, the function took into parameter one parameter, single parameter, which is a lambda expression, we can omit the parentheses. Also, if the lambda expression is the last argument that the higher order function took into its parameter, so we can omit the parentheses and make it like this. Hello my friends, and welcome back. In this tutorial, we're gonna talk about the it keyword. So there is a very important note that I should mention it here, and please pay attention to it because we will see it in many of our projects. If a lambda expression has only one parameter, we can omit the parameter along with this arrow. We can access the parameter using the it identifier. Let me give you a quick example here. For example, if we have a higher order function called function number 3, HOF, and it took into the parameter name, and it's which is a lambda expression, took into parameter a string and returns nothing. Okay, and in this HOF3, I just call the lambda expression itself and pass John to it. Okay, let me go up, and here I'll call HOF3, and here if I enter the parentheses here, we can see the name, and I should specify the name and the returning type, which is the unit. But it's very simple. Since we need to, since we have only one parameter, we can omit the parameter along with the arrow. So if I press enter, you can see Android Studio will generate this hint, it, which refers as a string. So here, the it is referring to a string. So when we call it inside the main, we have omitted the parameter and the arrow. Here I'll call the print ln, and what I need to print hi, and I'll call the it parameter. Okay, so you can see it is an identifier referring for the string. We can access the string using the it variable, and if you are using IntelliJ or Android Studio, you can see this it hint. Okay, it is a string. So here we have omitted the arrow and the variable. This is a quick and another example about the it identifier. Here we have the variable numbers. It's a list of integer numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here I am printing the numbers and using the filter method that it's used inside the list. And I am filtering here the numbers that are greater than 3. So again, when using a Lambda expression or anonymous function with a single parameter, you can use it instead of explicitly declaring the parameter. So here I am explicitly declaring the parameter. Let me run and show you the first result. We have 4 and 5, which are greater than 3. Now I can write the same thing here in different way using it. I'll start with the numbers or print ln numbers dot filter in the same way it greater than 3. So here it is referring for the numbers that they are inside the numbers list. Run, and you can see the same result. So the it keyword is a keyword used to refer to the implicit single parameter of a Lambda expression or anonymous function. When using a Lambda expression or anonymous function with single parameter, you can use it instead of explicitly declaring the parameter. Hello my friends, and welcome back. In this video, we're gonna take an example about the it identifier. As a quick recap, if a Lambda expression has only one parameter, we can omit the parameter along with the arrow. We can access the parameter using the it identifier. I'll make a new function and I'll name it as reverse string. This function will take a string as a parameter and a high-level function. So I'll name it as my function or my lambda, and this lambda will take a string as a parameter and return for us a string. Okay, so this is how we can define the lambda, okay, in the parameters. It's very simple. Now, inside the reverse string, it will take this string and execute this method that allows us to reverse a string. Okay, it's very simple. We start by result equal to my lambda, and I will pass the given str. So I am getting this string, I'm getting this lambda, I am executing this lambda and passing this string as a parameter inside it because it took into parameter the string. Okay, till now it's very simple, nothing new. Then I need to print this result. Okay, it's kind of taking a string, passing it to the lambda as a parameter, and return the reversed string and stored inside the result variable, and then print it. Nothing new. If I need to call this function, I'll go up into the main, and here I'll comment all of these functions. You can download them from the resources folder. The source codes are available in the resources folder. Okay, so this is our function called reverse string. I'll call it inside the main. So here, reverse string, and here I need to pass two parameters. One, the string, and the other is the lambda. Here, the string is, for example, hello, and the parameter here is a lambda expression. The lambda expression would be s, this is the s, and the arrow here s dot reversed. I am executing this s, this string, any string, I'm making any string here, and this is the string, and the returning is the reverse of this string. Let me run and see. And as expected, the hello should be reversed. You can see inside this lambda, I created this as, this is referring for any string, and the result of it should be a reverse of this string. I passed these two parameters to the reverse string function, and in turn execute this lambda on this string. Okay, it's very simple, guys. But there is a trick here, guys. If we hover the mouse here, and we can see that there is a yellow error. If we hover, lambda argument should be moved out of parentheses. We can, since it's the last, as I told you before, since it's a last variable and argument inside the function, I can move it outside the parentheses. Okay? Because it's the last, if lambda is the last parameter inside the function, then we can remove it from the parentheses. But the trick is not here. Whenever you have only single element inside the lambda, we can use it operator. So using it keyword in place of a single parameter in lambda expression is very important, and you can encounter in and you can see it in many of our coding projects. Since this lambda took only one string, please guys, this is very important note. Since this lambda expression took only one parameter, I can replace s gives us s dot reverse. I can replace it with the it operator. So it, you can see, automatically declared based on the expected type, which is the string. Okay, run, and you can see the same result. So it is referred for a single, can be replaced a single parameter in the lambda expression. So it's similar to as, like for example, as gives for us as dot reversed. Okay, so this is how we use it in Kotlin and in Lambda expressions. Welcome back. In this video, we're gonna talk about passing anonymous function as a parameter to high order function. Let's pass an anonymous function to our higher order function number 4. So higher order function number 4, it's getting a lambda expression inside it, subtract, and it took into parameters the 2 integers and return an integer. Then I am making inside this function a variable called a result, and I'm calling the subtract this lambda expression and passing 77. I need to minus 10 from and subtract 10 from 77. Then printing the result. Now let's go back to the main here, and I need to pass an anonymous function to this HOF4. So how to make it? Val subtract equal to function. This is the anonymous function. I'm defining here the int a and int b. These are the parameters that I'm gonna pass to this anonymous function and int. Okay, so this is a function, anonymous function. You see the function without name. I'm using the function keyword with 2 parameters, a and b, and the returning type of this function is an int. Return a minus b. Okay, this is the anonymous function. How to pass it? It's very simple. HOF4, I need to pass this subtract variable because this is an anonymous function, and this accepts any lambda or anonymous functions. Let's run. So as you see, the subtraction result is 67. This is how we pass an anonymous function as a parameter to higher order function. Now, let's move more further to understand that the anonymous function can return a value. This is the returning value or returning a value from anonymous function. Let me create an anonymous function called, or higher function called HOF5 that does not took any parameters, and returning type is a string. And here I'm creating an anonymous function inside it. So please guys, if you were fully concentrated with me, you maybe noticed that whenever you don't have any parameters, you should include the function method here. Okay? Or any returning type, it should be here. So here the val message equal function, that an anonymous function, you can see this is an anonymous function inside the higher order function, not like before. This is the HOF4. We have a subtract. I'm calling this lambda expression, for example, and making here the method body, okay, and calling it here. So I created the anonymous function and pass it to here. Here in this example number 5, it's different. Since I am getting no parameters and returning type is a string, so I should make an anonymous function that returns a string, so return hi. Then display the message and return it. How to call this function? It's different from here. It's like, for example, println HOF5, and that does not take any parameter. Hi from HOF5, okay, in order to distinguish it. And you can see there is an error. Let me see. I didn't call this inside function, so I called this function only. Let me go up, HOF, I need to call this also. So you can see there are two parentheses, high from HOF5. One for the HOF, the higher order function number 5, and one for the inside and the included anonymous function. So this parenthesis, the first parenthesis for the HOF that does not took any parameter, and the anonymous function that does not took any parameter also. Welcome back. In this video, we're gonna learn about how to return a regular function from higher order function and how to pass a regular function to higher order function. Let's start with returning a regular function from higher order function. Let's go down to here and let's create a higher order function number 6 that doesn't take into the parameter anything and that return a string. Okay, then I'll create a regular function here, regular function named as message function that returns a string and return this string high from the regular function. In order to call it and return it inside the higher order function, here I'll make return, and here I need to specify its reference, message function. You can see we've added the 2 dots here before the message functions, and it represents the function reference. We use it whenever we want to pass or return a function. Also, you can see that if I click Control and space, I can get and access all the functions inside this class. But since it's about returning a regular function, I need to call the message function. So this higher order function will call the return function that in turn return a string. So this higher order function will return a string in summary. Okay, let's go up. How to return a function inside the main, I need to call the higher order function. So print ln higher order function number 6. And please guys concentrate here. I need to add another parenthesis. If I don't add as the second parenthesis, I'll get the function message function, the returning function message function. Kotlin reflection is not available. But if I add the second parenthesis, I run again, I'll get the result that we expect, high from the regular function. So this is happening. So this is the first parenthesis, considered it as the higher order function parenthesis, and the second parenthesis is for the message function parameter that I'm calling inside the higher order function. So higher order function contains inside it a regular function. So these 2 parentheses is referring for you, one for the higher order function and one for the regular function. Now, let's learn how to pass a regular function to higher order function. I'll create another higher order function here, HOF7. It took into parameter a regular function, and this is a lambda, of course, but the regular function, reg function, that does not took into any parameters, and it returns a string. Then I need to print this regular function, reg function. Now, this higher order function, taking into parameter this lambda, I'll change it to a regular function. So the regular function that we have created before, called the message function, I need to pass it inside this HOF7. So here, passing a regular function to HOF. Again, HOF7. I need to get rid of these parentheses, and because I am not getting and passing a lambda expression. So back here, it expects me to pass a lambda expression. So if I pass the reference of the message function, I'll get this error, because if I hover here, I get required a string found a function, Kotlin function. So here, how to solve it? This parenthesis, these curly braces are expecting us to pass a lambda, but I need to get a parenthesis here. Okay, so it will solve it, because the message function is not a lambda expression or anonymous function. So we are passing a regular function. So for that, we have an error here when we add the curly braces. So I need to get the message function, passing it using the reference operator inside these parentheses. And now let's call HOF7. You can see we have two messages, one from HOF6 and one from HOF7. So everything is working fine. In this video, we learned how to pass a regular function to a higher order function and how to return a regular function from higher order function.